Next on Cougars Daily, we're going to break down the BYU running back room. I want to give you a full analysis on how good the Cougars actually be. Do they have depth behind LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeyer? And how much do the Cougars need to rely on Bear? We're going to talk about that and much more on today's show. Hello and welcome to today's episode. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Adam Gibby. If you do me a huge favor, like, subscribe to the video. It helps us be able to grow this brand, grow the community, and talk about the most important topics around BYU football. And let's get straight into it. Yesterday we talked about the wide receivers. Today we're going to talk about the running game. And it's no surprise, it's no secret that BYU is hoping to be able to be very dominant once again in the running game. And if you look historically, BYU, that has not been their calling card. They are a pass-first offense. But over the last couple of years, and especially last year, they relied heavily on the run. In fact, of their 48 touchdowns that they scored on offense, 33 of them were on the ground. Bear Bachmeyer alone had 11 rushing touchdowns. He only had 15 passing touchdowns. Now, he can throw the ball, and the pass is certainly going to be part of the offense. But when you look at, and again, this is kind of referring to yesterday's episode, if you look at BYU's depth in the wide receiver room, it's not hard to imagine that the Cougars may rely even more heavily on the running game this year as they're trying to get to the college football playoff. So as we look at their 2020 season, and here's another thing, they have a huge opportunity. I was looking at some of the rankings of some of their opponents this year. The best run defense from last year. Now, I understand the transfer portal changes everything. Okay, a lot of these rosters had complete turnover. But I do believe that it's still a good reference point, especially for July. The best defense BYU is going to face, rush defense, is Notre Dame, who was number 12 nationally last year. I mean, that's pretty good, right? That's good. If you're top 12, that's pretty good. But they don't play an elite defense, okay? They don't face any top 10 defenses, at least from last year. The next best team is Arizona State at number 31. So they face two top 31 rush defenses from last year. And then you have to go all the way down to 43 where you hit TCU. And there's none others in the top 50. So you have three of the top 50 rush defenses that you'll be facing this year. That's a great draw. On the flip side, they face some of the worst rush defenses from last year. Colorado, they ranked 135th out of 136 teams. They gave up 225 yards per game on the ground. Colorado State, not far behind them, at 127. You would almost think that, the elevation would help with that. Apparently not. Baylor is ranked 122nd. Here's the real shocker. There's a Big 12 team who prides itself on defense and their defensive line, who was ranked number 111 in the nation last year. Who do you think that is? It's not Kansas. It's not UCF. It's Utah. Yeah. Utah ranked 111th in rush defense last year. And then you have Cincinnati at 108. I mean, all of those teams are in the bottom, 25, bottom 30. So you only face three of the top 50, but just right there, we already have 5 of the bottom 30. And I could keep going down the list. There's more teams in the bottom 50. So if you are BYU, you're looking at this, you're going, okay, yeah, let's run the ball. First off, we're pretty good at it. Second, that's the weakness of a lot of our opponents. A lot of these teams actually had pretty decent pass coverage. The question, though, becomes the running back room. Okay? You have LJ Martin, Big 12 Player of the Year from last year. He's coming back. You've got Sione Moa. He got hurt last year. Preston Rex. We heard a lot about him in fall camp, a lot about practices. Didn't really pan out during the season. Javesa Demooney, Enoch Nawahine. They showed flashes. Didn't really ever get going too much. And then, of course, he had Bear Bachmeyer, who was also really good on his feet. When you look at that, combined, they were a solid offense. When I say solid offense, I mean LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeyer, who combined for over 1,800 yards rushing last year. And so that's your running back room. That's what you're dealing with. You have a lot of returning production, or at least a lot of returning players. Outside of Martin and Bachmeier, you don't have a lot of production per se. But it is good that there is that those players that are in the system. Preston Rex, Damuni, Nawahine, even though they never really got going last year, they know the system. They ran it last year. You'd assume that they're going to get better this year. But we need to talk about, in particular, the need for an RB2. Okay, and this is kind of going to go into my third topic as well, where you see it here on the screen, bear on the loose. Last year, BYU did not have a second running back. It was the definition of running back by committee. They would put out Sione Moa, but then he got hurt. They tried Damuni. He did okay. Then they tried Nawahine. They went Preston Rex. And at some point, they just said, you know what, we're just going to run the fly sweep with Parker Kingston. That kind of had some success. They tried Cody Hagan. They tried a lot of different things to get the running game going. But ultimately, it always ended up the same thing. If you needed tough yards, LJ Martin or Bear Bachmeier. That cannot be the case this year. They need to find an RB2. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I think that there's the thing about the running back position is that out of all the positions in football, it seems like if you get injured once, you could get injured again very easily. For Sione Moa, I mean, he almost had a career-ending injury last year with his leg. It just really makes you wonder, what is his role going to be? He's got a lot of talent. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield. But can he be RB2? Could it be Damuni? Could it be Preston Rex? Could it be Nawahine? There's a lot of questions there. And we'll have to see who's going to emerge there, because the reality is Bear Bachmeier can't do what he did last year. Okay, if you know BYU football, you've been following the team, you can count on one hand the number of players who have been able to play an entire season. I'm just going to give you a few seasons and just think about these. Think about all the Taysom Hill years. He never finished an entire season except for, I believe, once out of his 4 years. Maybe it was 5 years. Think about Zach Wilson. He had an injury. We think about Jaron Hall. He had an injury. Think about even Baylor Romney. He had an injury. And it's rare now. And you just don't see it all that often where mobile quarterbacks make it through an entire season. And so for Bear Bachmeier, I don't think the expectation can be, hey, we need to get 500 yards rushing again. That not to say it can't be a threat. And when the game's on the line, yeah, absolutely, do what you have to do to win. But I don't love the idea of quarterback draw. I don't love the idea of read option where he keeps the ball, 5-6 times a game. He should be we're going to run 1 or 2 designed draws a game. And then if there's nothing open, take off. Maybe run 1 option play. But if BYU wants to reach their goal, he can't be injured. He got injured last year. And we got injured against Texas Tech. And BYU was actually winning that game. Went down, scored a touchdown, but he got hurt. And then it kind of felt like the game was over at that point. So for Bear, he cannot be RB2. He can't. Now, is it possible that he ends up with the second most rushing yards? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a very real possibility that that happens again. But my hope is that BYU is able to run a system to where, sure, maybe he's still picking up 60, 70 yards per game on the ground, but he's not having to do it because of designed plays. Okay, again, maybe 2 or 3 designed runs, 1 or 2 options, and besides that, it's scrambles, it's picking up yards because it's open. Again, there's a big difference there. When you're a quarterback, you see a lane and you take it, versus you take the snap, it's a draw. Your only option is to go run straight into the linebacker that's charging at you down the line. A big difference there, big difference in the damage you take as a player. And so really what this kind of comes down to is you just have to remember that BYU is playing for more than 12 games. Okay, the goal isn't 12. The goal's not 13. For most teams, that's the goal. You look around the country. Arkansas, Northwestern, Boston College, all of those teams would be thrilled to make it to 13 games because that means they got bowl eligible. A lot of teams within the Big 12 would be happy to play 13 games. I think that Baylor would be happy. I think that Kansas would be very happy with 13 games. BYU's not going for 13 games. They're not even going for 14 games. I think that they are going for at least 15. And what that would mean is playing your 12 regular season games, playing in the Big 12 championship, so that's 13, playing a first round college football playoff game, that's 14, and hopefully winning that first game and getting a 15th game. Now, of course, the ultimate goal, and every player is going to say it, you want to win the national championship. But the next natural step for BYU, you can make an argument, is making the college football playoff. I'm going to go a step further, though. If you're going to make the college football playoff, win the first game. And so for BYU, they're planning for 15 games. And so I do believe to some extent we're going to still have to see running back room by committee. Now, if Sione Moa stays perfectly healthy, great, fantastic. But what I don't want to see is LJ Martin having to take 20, 25 snaps a game. Because over the course of what is hopefully a 15-game schedule or more, that's going to wear him down. He's going to get hurt. If he gets hurt, I don't want to say game over, but it's getting pretty close to that point. He's the Big 12, reigning Big 12 player of the year. Sione Moa has injury history. And so you need to rotate those other guys in. If the ultimate goal is to win a national championship, or at least make it deep in the college football playoff, then you cannot have Bear running it 10 times per game, LJ running it for 20 times per game, and the other guys running it maybe 10 times total. Okay, you need to mix those other players in there. And I think that player health is paramount. So, yes, BYU needs an RB2. Whether that's Moa, Rex, Damuni, Nawahine, whoever. But then they also need to have sort of a by-committee rotation after that. Okay, do you have a running back who's a great blocker? Maybe Damuni is a fantastic blocker. You can take LJ out of the game. Now, you still need to give Damuni the ball a few times. Otherwise, that's going to be the first indicator to defense is, it's a pass play. But can Damuni do that? Can Rex do that? What about Nawahine? Is Moa healthy enough to where he can split reps with Martin? Maybe LJ takes 60%, Moa takes 35%, and the remaining 5 go to these other guys. I'm not sure what the answer is. That would be ideal. But I do believe, just based off of the information we have right now, based off of the injury history, I think you have to have LJ Martin at number 1. You need a strong RB2 at number 2, but you need to rotate guys in. Getting to the end of the season healthy is the number 1 most important thing besides winning. And they kind of coincide with each other. If Bear Bachmeier gets hurt because he's having to run the ball more than 10 times per game, or if LJ gets hurt because he's having to take 80% of the snaps, BYU's hopes and dreams of the college football playoff are going to end very, very quickly. Again, the opportunity is there. I just went over the numbers. Colorado has the second worst rushing defense in the nation. Colorado State was the 8th worst in the country. Baylor was ranked 13th worst in the country. Utah was 24th worst in the country. And Cincinnati was 28th. Unless we see drastic changes, which, again, is possible in the transfer portal era, the reality is BYU should be able to run the ball well. And that needs to be the number 1 goal because, again, the receivers aren't proven yet. But we'll have to just wait and see what happens. Let me know, who do you think should be RB2? Do you agree with me? Does it need to be an RB2 and then have some kind of rotational committee in there? Do you want to see Bear Bachmeier run the ball less? Do you think he needs to? Or do you think he's just such a bulldozer of a player that it doesn't matter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for tuning in today. I will catch you on the next one.